You are tasked with setting up two SQL Server instances on Azure virtual machines in a high availability arrangement using an always-on availability group. The implementation must satisfy these conditions. The failover transition must be as fast as possible. Client sessions should be able to reconnect to the new primary replica seamlessly following a failover. What configuration should you implement? Option A. Place the virtual machines in separate virtual network subnets and utilize a basic Azure load balancer. Option B. Place the virtual machines in separate virtual network subnets within the same virtual network. Option C. Place the virtual machines in a single virtual network subnet within the same virtual network. Option D. Place the virtual machines in a single virtual network subnet and utilize a standard Azure load balancer. This scenario focuses on architecting high availability for SQL Server on Azure virtual machines. When designing for the fastest possible failover and seamless client reconnection, you are effectively choosing how the network infrastructure supports the always-on listener. You need to consider how the load balancer and subnet configuration influence the cluster's ability to reroute traffic once a secondary replica assumes the role of the primary. In my view, the correct answer is option D. Place the virtual machines in a single virtual network subnet and utilize a standard Azure load balancer. This configuration is critical because the always-on listener requires the floating IP feature, which is only supported by the standard Azure load balancer. By using this setup, you ensure that client traffic is correctly routed to the new primary replica immediately after a failover occurs, meeting the requirement for seamless reconnection. Explain which answer is correct and why. Options A and B are incorrect, primarily because they suggest configurations that do not utilize the standard Azure load balancer. Specifically, a basic load balancer lacks the necessary support for the direct server return or floating IP functionality that the SQL Server listener depends on. Additionally, while subnet architecture matters, the load balancer type is the deciding factor here to guarantee high availability performance. As an exam tip, always remember that for SQL Server always-on availability groups on Azure, the standard Azure load balancer is a non-negotiable component for production environments. It is designed to handle the specific traffic redirection needs of clustered services. Also, keeping virtual machines in a single subnet is a best practice for simplifying the cluster networking configuration and avoiding complex routing dependencies that could slow down your failover process.